women's studies courses that have been on offer in the state for the last, I think probably 20 or 30 years have been very popular, but it seems that because there aren't enough women enrolling, that the state government is going to cut these courses. And it's causing concern to the students and also people that have been involved in the courses over the years. And one of those people involved in the course as it stands at the moment is Tanya Wolverton. Tanya is a student and, as she describes herself, a former stay-at-home mum for 11 years. So, Tanya Wolverton, why do you think these courses are so important? Women's studies courses. What do you study?
Basically, we have a range of different subjects. So it'll be things like working in groups effectively, communication skills and whatnot. And these subjects help women that have been out of the workforce or out of the study world to slowly integrate back into society again.
And you said that this course was crucial for you, not just from the point of view of doing something, but for your mental health as well.
Most definitely. I suffered from postnatal depression, and so my self-esteem had hit rock bottom. So for me to then suddenly go back into the workforce or the study world, I was very, very scared. So this enabled me to pick and take small little baby steps back into it. Now I'm looking at a law degree.
That sounds like a pretty good outcome. And where do you live? You live in the Elizabeth area?
We live in Parafield Gardens, so we are out in the northern suburbs. Yes.
So this is something that's clearly very important to you and something that you'd like to see continued. What do you think then when you see, well, I suppose the government cutbacks, if you want to call them that, in this area? They're saying, look, we have to fund things that are popular. Is the course not popular?
It's not popular. Well, it is popular, but it's actually not very well advertised. So from looking at it, there's no advertising or marketing budget to be able to promote the course.
How did you find out about it then?
From a friend. So word of mouth, basically.
Well, what do you think about these cuts to women's studies? Fair enough or a wrong decision? Give us a call, 1300 222 891, 1300 222 891. Dr. Pamela Schultz is a former lecturer in women's studies with TAFE and someone who's got an interest in this area. Good morning, Pamela.
Oh, good morning to you, Ian.
You've just heard that story there. Someone who is now looking at taking on a law degree and turning, I suppose, their stay-at-home mum life into one involved in the legal system in South Australia. It's a pretty impressive story.
It is a very impressive story, and one of the things I can tell you is that over the years that I taught in that course from about 1979 through to 1984 as a part-time lecturer in TAFE, was the number of women who actually went on to do amazing things. They became social workers, teachers, childcare workers, and indeed some of them did go on to become lawyers. And in fact, I know that one of them ended up working in the area of family law and domestic violence. So you can see that they've turned their lives around and made a difference. And part of the thing about women's studies at TAFE is that it provided an opportunity and gateways to women who were denied the traditional ways of entering university or tertiary study. It also assisted them in their decision-making skills when hitherto they'd been in situations where that was difficult. And dare I say this, but study as an alternative therapy is well documented and often is more helpful than some social work and welfare interventions.
You're getting a nod from Tanya there. Tanya, you agree with that, do you?
Most definitely.
Yes, in fact, one of my a thesis that I wrote for some graduate studies way back in 1986 was called Women Returning to Study, where I followed 64 women who were doing everything from pottery to a PhD, but including a fair smattering of women doing women's studies, and most of them actually found that going back to study was more helpful than, in some cases, counselling. Now, that's not to say that is always the case, but in their lives it had made a huge difference. And for me, women's studies is just very typical of the South Australian can-do attitude, which has always been about women and the fair go. You know, having women being prepared to be the spearhead, the path breakers and so on.
But this is something that obviously was developed during the 70s and 80s when the women's movement was very strong. And if those numbers are falling away, then I suppose the government just has to use the taxpayers' money wisely. And if they cut back on these courses, isn't that fair enough?
Well, I understand that spending the taxpayer dollar is always fraught, and I understand that they need to do this wisely, but that doesn't mean that they need to cut women's studies in order to do that. What they need to do is to do some evaluation about the benefits and the outcomes of women's studies, and it occurs to me that what I have seen over my few years, and then since then as a lecturer in the University of South Australia, people who have come through that particular pathway have traditionally been much more motivated, much more focused, much more dedicated, and they have really turned their lives around and made much more of a contribution.
All right. Well, thank you, Pamela Schultz. Dr. Pamela Schultz, a former lecturer in Women's Studies at TAFE and now Chair of Defence Reserve Council of South Australia and a part-time lecturer at UniSA. Also just written a book and a PhD about how to instruct judges. So clearly someone with a good background in this area. We'll talk to TAFE SA and the Women's Studies Resources Centre Board in a moment. But first, Helene from Mount Barker, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Ian. How are you?
Very well. You're a graduate of this course? Or?
Yes, I am. And I'd just like to say I did a women's course approximately 10 years ago, and I was on the single parent pension, and now I work in the nursing industry, and if it wasn't for that TAFE course, I would probably still be floundering in the community and no confidence, and the women's studies course gave me so much confidence, and I was able to increase my studies and get my nursing degree.
When you hear the word women's studies, what do they do that gives you this confidence? I mean, do they focus on you as an individual, or do they tell you about the history of the women's movement? What is it?
It's not just about women's study. It's about politics, religion, women's place in the community, how things have changed, what you can do to increase your confidence to go into other areas of career, and just being in that in the environment and increasing your knowledge and learning just empowers you to go out there and do it.
Thanks for your thoughts, Elaine from Mount Barker. Alan from Chandler's Hill. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning. Two quick things. They need to do a cost and benefit study on this, because as I understand it doesn't cost a huge amount of money. And it's typical government, save $10,000 and waste $100 further down the track. And on top of that, this idea of it's not popular, well, don't give them money to advertise it, don't promote it. Of course it's not popular. So they get their own way in the end. So it's just stupid.
Thank you for your thoughts, Alan. Let's quickly go to Elaine Benstead, now Chief Executive Officer of TAFE SA. Well, Elaine Benstead, your response to Alan's comments?
Hi, Ian, and good morning to you listeners. I guess in response to Alan's comments about cost-benefit analysis, I'd start by saying that we're actually not stopping any of the women's education qualifications. TAFE offers women's education programs across 5 sites in metropolitan Adelaide and also 5 sites in regional, and I've just heard your speaker from Mount Barker. We are continuing to offer women's education qualifications in those 10 sites. The only change we are making is that we are not offering as broad a range of electives, that the subjects that make up particularly the Certificate 3 in women's education has a very, very large number of electives. So we are trimming the number of electives that are on offer. And we talked, I think Dr. Schultz talked about the need that we are using taxpayers' money, so we have to do as much as efficiently as we can, but doing it in a way that, as I said, those 10 sites that we currently offer women's education qualifications will all still offer those qualifications. So we're not reducing the ability for people to study what we see as a really critical course for all of the reasons that Tanya and Dr. Schultz outlined.
Well, let's go to Marilyn Rolls, now Chair of Women's Studies Resource Centre Board. Good morning, Marilyn.
Good morning, Ian.
Sounds like things aren't as bad as people are making out. What's your take on it?
Well, of course, I agree about the cost-benefit side of it, because our library, as you know, was set up right at the beginning, back in 1975, to set up women's studies and build up a resource collection, which is huge. At this moment, we have about 18,500 items on our catalogue, and there's still a whole room full of journals and newsletters, reports and so on that haven't yet been put on the catalogue. The ministers have said that they wanted to make the collection available and retain it intact. Now, I have to say to people that is not possible, it's not going to happen, and that there's only probably about 8% of the collection that's going to be given to the Bar Smith Library.
So you're saying that the library or the resource centre that these students use is being shut?
Yes.
So that's that would imagine be a worry to the students, wouldn't it?
Well, it means that they're going to miss out on having access to books because we had the space to have multiple copies, and the reality is that a lot of libraries are squeezed for space and they're shifting across to trying to get things in electronic form. Now, we've already moved to that as well, but again, because we didn't have very good government support, I have to say that the funding wasn't very much, and it has been cut over a number of years, so that had a whole lot of implications for us.
So have you been to the Minister for the Status of Women to see if you can get some support for this?
Yes, and to the Minister of Education and to the Minister for Further Education.
And no go?
Well, this is what the outcome is, that they said they wanted the collection not to be lost, but what's happened as a result of looking at possibilities, there's no one library that can take the whole collection. There are about 14 possible library sites, including some from interstate, and I think that's pretty disgraceful that none of them would find the money. That what we were asking for was $87,000 shared between several departments. That's less than a full-time teacher's librarian's salary, and they couldn't find it or they failed to ask the departments to find that amount of money, which would have enabled us to keep going. I don't think that matches up to cost benefit.
Okay. Thank you for your thoughts, Marilyn Rolls, Chair of Women's Studies Resource Centres Board there, and Kathleen from Adelaide's called in on 1300 222 891. You listen to 891 Mornings with me, Ian Hetchkey. It's almost 20 past 9. Good morning, Kathleen.
Good morning, Ian. Thanks very much. I think in the great tradition of South Australia, where women received the vote and the right to stand in Parliament before anywhere else in the world in 1894, and that we and also that we continued those reforms, especially in the Dunstan era, with the first sex discrimination legislation in Australia. I think it is absolutely imperative that we support women's studies, and also for the reasons that we are in a Labor government, and there are still huge injustices going on. Women still do not have equal pay. I don't understand why a Labor government would fail to support through those, especially in the government, who think they are children of Don Dunstan.
Well, do you think, Kathleen, then that maybe there should be some fighting fund set up, and maybe the women that have been through this course that have benefited from it could actually start a campaign to raise the $87,000 need to keep the resource centre open and offer scholarships and do various other things? Has that been thought of?
Well, I don't know whether Marilyn and her supporters have thought of that, but certainly I think it's necessary to, as I say, to support progress, social reform, and these studies over the long term help very much with that, and dealing with a lot of women's issues that, as I say, have not really been satisfactorily developed.
Well, Kathleen, we're getting quite a few texts on this as well. We've had one coming saying, I'm a women's studies success story. I completed schooling to year 11 and was a stay-at-home mum for 16 years. It's given me the confidence and the skills to go to uni, and now I'm a primary school teacher and I love it. So another story similar to Tanya, who's in the studio here, is on the way to becoming a lawyer. There we hear the end result. Ros from the Hills, good morning.
Good morning, Ian. Many years ago in the 70s, I was a young mum, and I did a couple of little courses with women's studies. A couple of courses, I shouldn't say little studies, because they were important to me at that time. They helped me enormously with my confidence, with getting out. They were affordable. And I think really to cut any education is just criminal, because any form of education is empowerment, and that's the bottom line with it.
Thanks, Ros. Annette Forbes is a retired lecturer in women's studies. Good morning, Annette. Good morning, Annette.
I think it's ludicrous to talk about this in terms of dollars. Like, I could give you literally hundreds of examples of women who've been empowered by this program and gone on to make enormous contribution to society. The impact that it has on them is quite incredible and quite visible. And to talk about, are the dollars being well spent, to me is just ludicrous. It's an amazing program that I felt proud to be a part of, and you literally see the impact that it has on women in terms of self-esteem, confidence and so on. So I'd be devastated if TAFE decided to discontinue it on the grounds they're putting forward. I think it's much more complicated than that.
Elaine Benstead, CEO of TAFE SA, you say you're not discontinuing the courses, but you are reducing the amount of support for the courses and the number of courses. Is that correct?
Reducing the amount of support for the course. The Department of Further Education actually funds TAFE on the number of training hours that it delivers, and the number of training hours that are being delivered in women's education in this financial year is exactly the same as it was in the previous financial year. So we're not reducing the amount of training, but we are reducing the number of electives that are on offer. The Certificate 3 is quite an unusual course in the way that it's made up. It actually only has 3 core subjects that people need to do, and then there's a choice of 37 different electives. What we're doing is trimming the number of individual subjects that are on offer, and we make no bones about the fact that we're doing that so that we can run the course as efficiently as possible, but the number of training hours and the number of students who will be able to complete their qualification in women's education is not being reduced at all.
Any other courses being cut?
We continually review all of our courses. We run courses over 50 sites and over about 800 different qualifications. We review them every single term. We review them according to the amount of student demand there is and the amount of industry demand for those qualifications. So there's changes every term, but overall TAFE is actually programmed this year to deliver more training hours than we did last year, which was an increase on the previous year. So overall we're in a growth pattern because there's a real need for people with qualifications.
Well, thanks for explaining that, Elaine Benstead, Chief Executive Officer of TAFE SA, and also to all our other contributors to our discussion this morning. And thanks to you, Tanya Wolverton, student with Women's Studies here. Tanya, does that make you feel a little bit better, or?
I guess my concern is partly the electives that are being cut. To complete certificates, you need a certain amount of electives. Some of those are women's safety, which is self-defence. A lot of the women that are coming through come from domestic violence backgrounds, and so therefore they need to be empowered. My other question I would have is that Certificate 4 has been cut from Port Adelaide TAFE, so women can't complete all of their certificates in the one place. They then need to look at going on to another campus, and that's not always possible for people out in, say, Elizabeth and Port Adelaide.
Well, one thing that's obviously good about this morning's discussion is we have given the courses some advertising, and we're getting some pretty good endorsements for the courses too. So thanks for your involvement this morning, Tanya Wolverton, student from Women's Studies course out in the north of town, and we'll let you get back to your studies. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.